Hi everyone, Dr. K, naturopathic doctor. Today talking about, continuing to talk about acid reflux from last week's video, because I realized that talking about stomach acid can be a little bit of a complicated thing. So when we were talking about silent GERD, talking about acid reflux, talking about heartburn and GERD. So essentially, when somebody is suffering with that, the sphincter, or the opening to their stomach, is open. So it's allowing the acid from the stomach to go up into the esophagus. So the tube that you swallow food and then it goes down into your stomach, it's allowing acid to get there. And therefore some people experience, the typical heartburn. They have like that burning feeling in their chest or throat. And then last week I had talked about silent GERD, which is that you don't have any of those symptoms, but that it can be just a cough or kind of like a postnasal drip congestion feeling. But getting back to the acid piece, because that is where it gets a little confusing. We use antacids, over-the-counter antacids, or proton pump inhibitors, PPIs, to deal with these symptoms. The trouble with that is that is dampening the acid, which is helping our symptoms, so then we feel better. However, over long periods of time, what happens is that, we have less stomach acid, which means that we're digesting the foods that we intake less effectively. So that means that over time, we're not getting the nutrients that we need. And then you can imagine if you take, the PPIs or the antacids for decades at a time, that's a lot of nutrients that you could potentially be missing out on. So the premise that naturopaths actually use instead of the antacid piece is that we actually want to build up your stomach acid again, because the trigger to keep that sphincter, or the opening to your stomach, closed is actually sufficient acid. So if you have sufficient acid, the sphincter closes because it has its job to do. If you don't have enough, it relaxes and opens, and that's where the reflux happens. So building up the acid comes with a few different prongs, but one is removing your food sensitivity, so decreasing the inflammation in your body overall just to help yourself out. Avoiding food triggers like the typical ones like alcohol, red meat, fried foods, etc. For the time being, doesn't have to be forever, but just while you're healing. And then going through and improving your stomach acid. So that can be as simple as doing, the apple cider vinegar chews. It could be doing just a couple tablespoons of apple cider vinegar before meals, 10-15 minutes before meals. Or the next kind of more intense solution is doing betaine HCl. Now, any of these, I would definitely recommend that you talk to a naturopath about this. How to dose it, when to dose it, what's the appropriate amount and form and things like that. But those are definitely ways that you can build up your stomach acid, and they're not forever. Once your stomach acid is built back up again, your body acclimatizes, meaning that it gets used to kind of what you're asking it to do with these supplements, vitamins that you're putting in, and then it takes over the job. So it's basically a healing process that you need to go through, and then you don't need it anymore. So I don't advise experimenting on yourself with the supplements or vitamins, even if it's just apple cider vinegar, even though that's, fairly safe. I still think the safest bet is to consult a professional before trying these things on yourself. However, the premise of the acid reflux is actually that you don't have enough acid to cause that trigger for the sphincter, or the opening, to keep closed. So if you have any more questions, definitely feel free to visit my website, drknaturopath.com, or chat with a naturopath in your vicinity that can help you out with these concepts as well. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed, and we'll chat soon.